I see service as support. When I look for volunteer opportunities, I'm not only trying to find them in the typical things you would consider, making dinner, donating toys, donating to a GoFundMe. I am looking for ways to support someone. How can I show that person I care about them? How do I show up for them? Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. Here I talk about different ways to bring more joy into your life, from gaining perspective and building relationships to dealing with hardships and improving your health. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about finding purpose, and I believe the number one way to find purpose, to see what you have to offer, is through service. Here's why. When you feel awful, or when you feel like you're not important, when you're staring up at the heavens, shaking your fist, asking, why me? Service helps with all three of those. When you feel awful, service can help you take the focus off yourself and put it onto others. When you feel like you're not important, service shows you what one simple act can do. When you ask, why me? Service gives you the perspective that you're not alone in the midst of a crisis or a hardship. I grew up in a very service-oriented family, and what I've learned from my parents is service does not have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be extravagant, and I think that's where we get really overwhelmed and we back out before we even get started. So in this episode, I want to give you some tips on how to figure out what is helpful for people and how service can change you and your brain even. And throughout this, as we're talking about these different things, you'll hear a lot of simple ways that you can step in to help another person. So let's start with the facts. Some research published in Nature Communications, which by the way, I am linking. It's so cool because it shows this really is true. Giving impacts your mood. This is science. Scientists broke 50 people up into two groups. They were all given about $25 each week for a month. The first group was told to spend the money on themselves. The second group was told to spend it on others. At the beginning of the study, participants took part in an fMRI machine. They watched hypothetical scenarios of giving money to people. While this was happening, researchers watched their brain activity. After the test, participants recorded how they felt. Researchers found the participants who had agreed to give away that $25 felt a lot happier than the group who was planning to spend it on themselves. And during the fMRI testing, the giving group had more activity in a specific part of the brain's reward center. Isn't that incredible that just the intention of giving can make a difference in how you feel and how your brain is working? It's actually activating your brain's reward center. I know in the holidays it can be a little overwhelming when it comes to serving because it is so easy to feel like everything costs a ton of money and the budget's already low because of the obligatory Christmas gifts you're buying for what feels like 10 million people on your Christmas list. So I want to tell you that service does not have to be complicated. Living a service-oriented life is really just looking for tiny opportunities to serve. All you need to do is be on the lookout for someone who needs a hand. Service doesn't have to be a grand gesture. I know when you want to serve, at least when I want to serve, what I really want to do is just be Oprah and yell out, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. But I'm not in that place where I can do that. So one of my guests on the show earlier this year was a single parent without any extra money. She talked about that stage of her life. Yet somehow in that stage, when she had no extra money, when she was a single mom, she was able to pull together enough to make a cake or cookies for neighbors. I loved that. It is so simple. When I was growing up, this meant staying a little later at every single event we ever went to, whether that be a wedding or a church gathering, whatever it was, we stayed late to clean up, and we always helped put away chairs and tables. Your service can be even smaller than that. When I ran a marathon a few years ago, after I was done, my husband told me about what my parents did as they stood on the sidelines. As every single runner ran past them, they cheered them on as if they were their own daughter. Caring about other people and serving other people is as simple as cheering for them on the sidelines. That costs $0. If you're not actually at a run, cheer for people by sending them a text to tell them how great they're doing. Tell them how awesome they are when you see them. I see service as support. When I look for volunteer opportunities, I'm not only trying to find them in the typical things you would consider making dinner, donating toys, donating to a GoFundMe. I am looking for ways to support someone. How can I show that person I care about them? How do I show up for them? And yes, sometimes that means I'm making dinner, donating toys, donating money, but sometimes it's as simple as writing someone a letter or calling that person out of the blue. Whenever I talk about volunteering, one thing that constantly comes up is, how do I know how to help someone? I know this is overwhelming. One question that is not super helpful, even though the intent is there, and I do think intent matters, so be easy on the people. If you're going through something hard and they ask you this, be easy on them. But the question that is not helpful is there anything I can do to help you? As I've been working on this podcast for the last couple of years, I've learned it is very overwhelming to get a question like that when you're going through some kind of tragedy or crisis or hardship. One woman told me how there is so much happening when you lose a loved one, that you're not only dealing with grief, but you are dealing with so many choices and tasks that come with laying a person you love to rest. It makes it hard to tell someone what they can do for you. It's just another thing you have to decide when you're already having to make choices when it's really, really difficult to do so. So she gave me the example of being specific. Can I wash your dishes? Can I bring you lunch? Do you need help with laundry? But only offering one of those things, because again, if you give someone a long list of things you can do for them, it can be overwhelming for that person dealing with grief to have to make a choice. I believe being specific will also help the person you're trying to help understand what you are willing to do. Once I got the question, is there anything we can do to help? I had a newborn baby and I was really having a hard time raking my leaves and getting them put away. So I said, yeah, I really need someone to rake my leaves. The people who asked me the question looked at each other and started walking backwards, and they were like, oh, wow, yeah, that's a hard job. I'm sorry you need someone to do that for you. That's not exactly what they said, but you get the idea. They wanted to help, but not in the way that had them scooping leaves into bags. Speaking of leaves, earlier this month, I asked a friend if he could use help raking leaves. He responded, no, but would you pick up my acorns? Acorns all over his yard. By asking him something specific, 1, I took away the pressure of giving him another choice to make, and 2, he had an idea of what I was willing to do. So he felt comfortable asking if I could do something similar. Okay, so there we have it. Be specific. It's so easy in theory, isn't it? I was talking about this with a couple friends and they said, but yeah, what if I can't think of how to help? What if I don't have that specific offer I can make? So this is what I do, and I'm going to break it up into a couple of categories. These are the kinds of needs people have. 1, emotional needs. 2, tangible needs. 3, service or time needs. So emotional needs, I'd say this is like someone needs you to sit with them during chemo. Someone could use a phone call, a note of encouragement, just to sit there in their living room with them and say a few words and just listen. Tangible needs. This would be things like food, money, donations of other products, maybe a drive home after a medical procedure. Service is when you're using your time to help. That could be mowing someone's yard, doing someone's grocery shopping for them, cleaning dishes. So my mother-in-law is the best Christmas shopper in the world. This is a little sidetracked, but stay with me for a second. It comes back around. Don't worry. Do you have someone in your life who always gets you the best gifts ever? It's like my mother-in-law will come to my house in July, notice my printer isn't working well, and get me a new one in December. She'll take note when I say, we're saving up for a video camera when I'm 6 months pregnant, and a month before I deliver, send me a video camera for Christmas. With every gift she has ever given, it is so thought out, it's so intentional, she sees a need, and she goes in to fill it. This is the approach I try to bring into living a service-oriented life. This really is a practice. I am not perfect at it by any means, and I drop the ball my fair share of times. But when you live in a Christmas gift mindset, you're always listening to the people around you and looking for a way you can step in to serve. So let's take this to emotional needs. It's pretty easy to notice in your workplace or family or circle of friends when you have a friend who is struggling. Maybe they've mentioned personal grief or depression. Maybe they've been quiet at work. Maybe they walked in late to the office and said they spilled their coffee on the way in, and you can tell they just aren't having a great day. So start noticing this kind of stuff. Then you'll know, hey, I could send my friend a note about how she's doing a great job. I could leave chocolates at her desk. I could grab her a new coffee on my way back from my break. I mentioned listening to people as an option in emotional needs. Listening is so powerful. Just ask the question, how are you doing? Really, how are you doing? And just sit. Sometimes there is nothing right to say, and that is okay. When there is nothing right to say nothing. Just listen. Okay, second, tangible needs. Several years ago, I had weeks and weeks of chaos at work and in my personal life. It was like 2 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day, nonstop, throwing a 3-year-old and a newborn. It was insane. My friend, who I was being super flaky at texting with, noticed I was hardly coming up for air. I imagine she thought, what are the tangible needs Danielle needs right now? Well, people need to eat. She dropped by my house with Chipotle in hand, and I was so thankful. About an hour after she did this, I was rocking my newborn to sleep as I thought about the insane day I had. It was 8 p.m., and I just realized that Chipotle I had eaten an hour earlier was literally the only thing I ate that day. And yes, I woke up around 3 a.m. I started crying and felt so grateful to my friend for anticipating that need. Tangible needs also include things like funeral services, meal trains, diaper donations for someone having a new baby, setting up a GoFundMe for hospital expenses, gathering gas cards for someone who needs to travel for medical help. It goes on and on and on. All right, let's get to the third need, physical service and your time. When I do something difficult, I try to think of someone who could use my help with the same thing. I've been raking and bagging up so many leaves this season. Can you tell? They're on my mind. As I was doing this, completely able-bodied, I was remembering having my newborn and several patches of grass that were totally destroyed because I could not get the raking of the leaves done. I started thinking, who could use my help getting their leaves raked? As I threw leaves in a big trash bag by the armful, I thought of different people. I just kind of went through a list of who I thought could need my help. That's when I thought of my friend who I ultimately texted, who I talked about earlier. And like my mother-in-law, if someone says they have a need, just move in and say, I've got this. I can help you there. This can be so simple. This can be someone says, oh, I can't reach the lights in my garage. You could say, hey, I have a ladder. I'll be there at 2. Or they could say, we're getting ready to move on Friday. You could respond, do you need help putting boxes in the U-Haul? Can I bring boxes to help you? Can I help you pack? It seems so simple saying this here, of course, and it's a little more complicated when you try to bring something like this into your own busy, hectic lives. And I am just so grateful that I've had parents who I've watched for 30-something years live this day in and day out. And I am really trying to do the same for my kids. I laugh because about a week ago, we went through a coffee stand line and bought some coffees for the people behind us. And my son went ballistic. Category 5 temper tantrum, including the words, I like to be selfish. Being selfish is good. It's not about them. I want my frozen lemon. He didn't get a drink. Oh, baby steps. We have a sign in our house that says work. That's it. It just says work. It represents one of my favorite sayings. Forget yourself and get to work. And by the way, not a single sign in my house that says being selfish is good. So we're trying over here. I want to thank you so much for being here on Happiness and Progress. And I hope some of the examples I gave as we talked about these different ideas on how to serve will kind of help you stir up your own idea. And maybe someone came to mind. Act on that. Act on that now. And I know you can make a difference for the people around you in your circle. I want to thank you guys so much for being here on Happiness and Progress.